Good morning, you beautiful people. Welcome to Wake Up. How are you? I hope you're well.
Wake up, the Sonia Poulton.
As anticipated, things not working quite as expected, although it might have just done. I just can't hear it because I haven't got my earpiece in. How are you? It is the last day of the Wake Up term and your mama is all over the place. That's me, as opposed to your actual mother. How are you? How are you indeed? It is Monday, the 30th of March. It's just gone 9:02 a.m. I'm sorry, a bit late. I'd forgotten drinks, and I always need drinks around here. It is, well, sort of like apparently BST now. And by that, I mean British summertime. It's the last day of the Wake Up term. After today's show, I'll be taking a break until Monday, April the 13th. And honestly, peeps, I need it. I actually do need a break. And I just want to say heads up, today is going to be a roller coaster of emotions on Wake Up. It's not going to be an easy listen at times, but you're sort of used to that, aren't you? And so what is on today's show? Well, we're going to be talking to Gordon Woods and his daughter, BRIANNA. Gordon is the author of this book. And let me just see if I can see myself on screen here. Gordon is the author of this book, which is being put through hoops. Gordon is a survivor of the Celtic football scandal abuse. And Gordon is dealing with his own personal issues. And he's chosen to come and join us today. And it may well get emotional, people. It may well. Today is a slightly different show. I'm not going to focus on kind of like contemporary news in the same way as I normally do. It's going to be more of a roundup of the names in the news that I often talk about. So I'm going to be talking about Nicola Bulley, about Madeleine McCann, about Lucy Letby, about Noah Donohoe, about why Baroness Margaret Hodge of Barking must absolutely not be the next Ofcom chair. Absolutely not. And I'll also be looking at global DJ superstar Avicii and an ending that many do not believe. This is a frequent request, and I finally got around to it. How are you all? How are you all? Grand risings to you all. Take a break and some drinks, says Randy. I know. I'm looking forward to it, to be honest with you. And I hope you are all absolutely fabulous. I'm fabulous, to be honest with you. The weather is looking nice out there, although it was absolutely bitter freezing yesterday. We had this really peculiar thing in England. I don't know if you do it in the rest of the world. I don't think so. And that is we mess around with the clocks on a constant basis. So this weekend, the clocks went forward, which essentially meant we lost an hour. And then in winter, they go back, which essentially means they, according to them, we gain an hour. But we don't at all. It's absolute. It messes with us. It messes with our circadian rhythms and everything else. How are you, Stollyphiles? Another glorious morning, is it? Hypocrisy. Thy name is Margaret Hodge, said Kira. Indeed, absolutely. And Hazzy Bass Driver. I'm not at all surprised. Mark is great researcher. Very much enjoy Mark's work. Sunny but cold, says Stephen. They do the clicks in the US too, but a week earlier. Do they? Do they do it, London lady? Good morning, all, says Vanessa. So let's see. Where do I want to start? Well, first of all, I think it's really important to say this, and that is solidarity with the Donohoe family. So they are currently experiencing a live inquest with a jury. And so I still have to be extremely careful what I say so that I am not accused of contempt of court or anything like that. But when it's over, I will have much more to say on this. What this family have been put through in this inquest into the death of young Noah is too horrendous for most parents and decent people to comprehend. There has been the smearing of Noah Donohoe, the inquest delays. His mum, Fiona, had to fight tooth and nail. And I'm really starting to understand now why there was such a delay on this case. I really am. There's so much that has come out in recent weeks. It's currently in its ninth week at Belfast Coroner's Court. It's being heard for a jury. It's expected to continue until May 2026. And so far, and let me just be clear here. What I'm about to say is the official narrative. It doesn't mean I agree with it. And like I say, once the inquest has concluded, I will have plenty to say on this. Plenty. But so far, they have sort of pathologists agree that Noah's death was consistent with drowning. Experts have testified that there is no evidence of third-party involvement or assault. That Noah had significant bruising to his forehead. He had scuff marks on his knees and elbows. Apparently, there was no sign of trauma to his brain. Toxicology tests found no traces of drugs or alcohol in Noah's system. And some of the stuff that's gone on has just been too awful to even bear. I cannot imagine how poor Fiona, Noah's mum, has coped with this. The jury heard this incredibly emotional recording of a 999 call made by Noah's mum, Fiona, expressing her extreme concern for her son's welfare on the night he disappeared. And CCTV has also confirmed that Daryl Paul, who was later jailed for stealing Noah's laptop, was in the same area as Noah in South Belfast shortly after he left home. However, legal teams say that there was no physical interaction between them and the theft was opportunistic. And then there was this really weird situation that happened to do with Instagram. And that was the memorialization of Noah's account. And this family appeared anonymously at the inquest to deny requesting that Noah's Instagram account be memorialized after his death. And it was very weird because records showed that the request used an email address nearly identical to theirs, but they denied any involvement. But that's kind of odd that because his family didn't request that. So why would people request that his Instagram account be memorialized? It's very weird stuff. The eyewitness accounts have been very alarming as well. There's been reports of screams heard shortly after midnight on the night Noah vanished. There's been real problems with the police. Oh my God, don't even get me started. This is just absolutely awful. The inquest heard that the police missed Noah on CCTV footage, even though they were expressly looking for him. What the hell? And a police witness admitted to failing to check for time differences on CCTV cameras, which the coroner, Mr. Justice Rooney, described as a clear miss. You think? Then there's been conflicting statements, and the inquest was briefly adjourned after a police witness, Constable Worry, gave conflicting evidence about being briefed to search for Noah's missing green coat. He later admitted he didn't believe he had actually been told about the coat at the time. Something really weird, a lot of jiggery pokery has been taking place. Very weird. Then there's been question marks about body worn camera. And again, Constable Worry, original 2020 statement said the search was captured on body worn camera, but he later submitted a second statement in 2022 saying he cannot remember if the camera was activated. And just the discrepancies have been deemed so serious that Mr. Justice Rooney warned the officer of his right against self-incrimination before he continued his testimony. Really problematic. The CCTV misses, how can that even possibly have happened? Anyway, the inquest will resume today, Monday, March the 30th, and is ongoing. Very painful stuff. Greetings from Denmark, says Kitty K. And I hope you are beautiful and glorious in Denmark, Kitty. So really egregious stuff. No parent should have to go through this. And we are clearly seeing that there was a problem with the police investigation. And as I say, I will have much more to say moving forward. I want to talk about these people. I'm sure you will recognize her. Her name is Nicola Bulley, and with her partner, Paul Ansell. And I was due to be joined today by somebody who's done quite a lot of work into Nicola Bulley. Ended up not being able to make it, but that was fine because actually everything worked out much better the way that I actually wanted to do today. So, but I do want to comment briefly on Nicola Bulley because Paul Ansell, her partner, was at the London School of Economics last week giving a lecture. Well, what was Paul Ansell doing at the Fabian School? Because LSE is a Fabian school. So I thought that was quite an interesting place for him to give a lecture. For those who aren't familiar, Nicola Bulley disappeared on January the 27th, 2023, after taking her pet dog Willow for a walk along the River Wire in Lancashire. She texted a friend to organise a play date. She then joined a Microsoft Teams call with work shortly after 9 a.m. The conference call finished at 9:30 a.m. Nicola stayed logged on, and approximately 5 minutes later, another dog walker came across the bench where Nicola had been sitting overlooking the river. Her phone was left on the bench, along with a harness and lead belonging to Willow, who was found running free, running backwards and forwards. And at 10:50 a.m., Nicola's family were notified of her disappearance. An investigation was launched. It was big news. Drones, helicopters, river sweeps, police search dogs, all mobilized as part of the extensive missing person operation. It was a national and international story. And like Jay Slater, the lad from Lancashire who went missing on Tenerife and then was found in a ravine close to a month later. But like Jay Slater, this case will be used to shut down online commentary. And we know that we can't leave it to the authorities to just do the job, because there are consistent and persistent problems with the authorities. Actually, it's amazing what work can be undertaken online. It isn't just full of troll people online looking at cases. And the problem is what the authorities really want to do is they want to shut down legitimate commentary and legitimate debate. So people like me will be caught up in it. That's the intention. And it's easy to get people to hate so-called online trolls. It's less easy to get them to hate investigative journalists, right? Because we're doing our job. We are actually doing our job. But so are a lot of these people online. It's amazing how much information can be garnered online. Even police turn to online sleuths at times. But anyway, Paul Ansell is doing this whole big thing about how, and I don't dispute what he's saying. Some people simply take it too far. Like the guy who filmed Nicola Bulley's body being pulled from the river. That's taking it too far, right? So some people clearly take things too far. But the problem is what they want to do is they want to sweep up everybody in this net. There are already sufficient laws to deal with people who behave in a malicious way online or do egregious things or are harassing or disruptive. We don't need any further. But what there was a report which was published by the College of Policing, which was actually back in November 2023. And it concluded that staff in the Lancashire Police Press Office struggled to cope with the tidal wave of interest that Nicola's case had generated. And actually, yes, true. At the height of the search, there were some 6,500 news stories about Nicola, which were published worldwide in the space of just one day. And Paul is very much interested in like TikTok videos. He's not interested in what's going on in mainstream media. He doesn't blame mainstream media in any way. But why should he? Mainstream media is absolutely part of the establishment. They're not rocking the boat anytime soon. It's online where the boat gets rocked, which is, forgive me, an unfortunate metaphor for what I'm actually talking about here. But the COP review considered it to be a mistake, that what happened was at the police press conferences, lots of people were allowed in, not just accredited journalists, lots of people. And the COP review considered this to be a significant mistake. It also determined that negative social media attention had a significant impact on levels of confidence in Lancashire Constabulary. Well, there was a reason for that. Lancashire Constabulary absolutely failed Nicola Bulley. They put out horrible and unnecessary. Well, it wasn't horrible because it's personal to her, but it was unnecessary information. They suggested that she may have a drink problem. They talked about her being menopausal. All this stuff that was absolutely unnecessary for Lancashire Constabulary to put out, but they want to turn their ire on what was going on online. But it's the same thing that's going on with the Jay Slater case. And so what the authorities do is they get together people who are victims, such as Nicola Bulley's family, such as Jay Slater's family, and they realize that these are incredibly emotive topics, but that they can harness the grief and bereavement of these people in order to bring through further totalitarian measures. Because the reality is the Online Safety Act isn't working quite how they wanted it to. And I will get to that shortly. So it's really quite painful. And the coroner had concluded that Nicola died almost immediately. There's lots of question marks around her death. Today is a show full of question marks. I don't necessarily claim to have all the answers to anything, really. I oftentimes will just do my research, I'll raise up issues, and I will leave it to my viewers to make up their own minds. We don't spoon feed people around here. Anyway, to cut it very short, there was Paul Ansell at Fabian School at the LSE, talking about the impact that all of this had on him and his family. And we just know that this is the latest stage in the crackdown online. That is the reality. Nikki wonders whether power-hungry people join the police. I think some do. I think that sometimes there are genuine people who join the police force because they actually want to do good in the community. I think that actually happens. Some people get corrupted along the way, and some people are just psychos when they join in the first place. And the police, terrible as usual. Woody, absolutely appalling. The way that they dealt with this, and now they want to blame people on social media. I think that's very poor indeed. Very poor indeed. And who heard the Davies debate in Parliament to do with Lucy Letby? Oh, thank you to everybody who has written in about this debate. Ian, Joanne, thank you all. So Davies, Member of Parliament, had an adjournment debate in Parliament on Thursday, 26th of March, on the conduct of Cheshire Police in the case of Lucy Letby. I wasn't shocked to see that there was hardly any MPs there at all. 6 tops, right? And I mean, Ian had said to me in letter, perhaps it was because of the last session of the day due to them jetting off for the Easter break. Whatever the reason, members of Parliament are elected by us, the public, not me personally, obviously, I'm politically homeless, but are elected by us, the public. And we demand that they are part of these debates. And they are hardly ever are. They'll rock up if it's a debate about their expenses, but if it's about child abuse, or if it's about miscarriages of justice, or if it's about welfare or disabled people, hardly any members of Parliament turn up. Of the hundreds of members of Parliament, hardly any turn up. There was about 6 at this one. And I have to say, Davies did an incredible job. It was an excoriating overview of what has happened with Lucy Letby. Lucy Letby, let us not forget, is the former neonatal nurse from the Countess of Chester Hospital up north and in England, and she was convicted of the murder of 7 babies and convicted of the attempted murder of a further 7 babies. And Davies just tears into Cheshire Police and about the fixation of Cheshire Police. Yes, police, again, really problematic. Operation Hummingbird, which was the investigation into Lucy Letby, was really a failure. It was a failure. But the problem is that the police were hoping that their Netflix doc was going to make them all look like heroes in capes. And actually what it did was it ended up revealing how appalling and how thin the so-called evidence against Lucy Letby was. Anyway, Davies absolutely tore into, for example, the main prosecution witness, Dr. Dowie Evans. And he essentially portrayed Dr. Evans as being portrayed by money. He said at least £80,000 was paid to Dr. Dowie Evans for being an expert witness for the prosecution against Lucy Letby. And Davies gave an incredible speech. I mean, it's absolute barnstorming. I recommend it to anybody about the many mistakes and wrongdoings of Cheshire Police. And as Joanna pointed out in her email to Davies, which she sent to me, she was grateful, as indeed I was, that Davies opened his speech talking about Sally Clark. Sally Clark was a miscarriage of justice, a mother accused of murdering 2 of her babies. It was Cheshire Police, absolute failure. They used dodgy stats. The same with Lucy Letby. There was a lot of parallels that could be drawn between Lucy Letby and what happened with Sally Clark. And poor Sally Clark, she ended up spending 3 years inside. Then they realized miscarriage of justice. It was overturned. She was released. And then she died just several years later of alcohol poisoning because she was never able to recover. How can you recover from an experience like that, from being wrongly convicted and then locked up with hardened criminals, when you're already grieving the death of your own babies? Awful, awful stuff. And the are labeled, what's that? Oh, I think I'm not going to get involved with the conversation there, because they're all discussing something at a different point and it will just throw me off. So forgive me, people. Anyway, so a number of people wrote to David Davies, thanked him for his excellent speech and for keeping the memory of Sally Clark alive, which I think is also really important. And then what we had at the end of David Davies's speech was Sarah Jones, MP, who kind of came into bat for Cheshire Constabulary about how they've been given outstanding ratings in spite of all their failures, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, as Joanne pointed out, this is what the public has come to expect and is commonly known as failing to the top. Absolutely that. Anyway, David Davies told the MPs on Thursday that he would write to the Director of Public Prosecutions, a job formerly held by Sir Keir Starmer, and he wants to call for a review into the conduct of Cheshire Constabulary. He has previously branded the Letby case as one of the major injustices of modern times, and he's not alone in believing that. Anyway, Cheshire Police were really upset and they put out a statement. They are not happy with the pushback. They actually thought they were going to be seen as modern day heroes for their work, right? So they're really angry with what he had to say about them. Cheshire Constabulary said it strongly refutes comments made by Sir David Davies in Parliament. He claimed there had been multiple deviations from best professional practice. The force said it remained confident in the integrity of the investigation, the conduct of the prosecution, and the decisions reached by the courts. It said constant noise about Lucy Letby was undermining public confidence in the justice system. And it said it was essential that such scrutiny is grounded in fact and does not inadvertently cut across due process, ongoing legal considerations, or the independence of the judiciary. And it talked about how the force had come under constant criticism over the past 2 years and that they were angry with a core group of individuals who appear to pride themselves on spreading misinformation, making baseless claims, and attempting to destroy reputations. And they told on themselves, because here it was really key what's going on. The truth is that they became absolutely fixated that Lucy Letby was their girl, and they managed to bring in a dodgy expert witness, one of several, and who was prepared to testify that she was the problem, while also the fact that they were ignoring that there were complaints being made about other doctors who had complained about Lucy Letby. In fact, it was really essentially one meeting with several of the doctors that convinced Cheshire Police that Lucy Letby was the one responsible for the deaths and attempted deaths of these babies. Anyway, when I say they told on themselves, they're more concerned about protecting their reputations than they are about a true justice. And that is really the problem when we experience miscarriages of justice, probably anywhere in the world, but certainly in England, is that they are not prepared to admit when they get things wrong. And the system is really bad in this respect, and it will do everything it can to protect itself. So the idea that their reputations are being undermined, so what? Maybe your investigation shouldn't have been dodgy in the first place. Absolutely disgusting. Disgusting, selfish to the max, London lady. This is potentially an innocent woman locked up, and all they're worried about is their sodding reputations. You gave yourselves away, people. We know who you are. Yeah, hit the like, says Randy. Indeed. So I thought that was very interesting. I thought David Davies did a remarkable job. A remarkable job. It's not easy. It's not easy, but he's always been like that. I don't agree with everything he says. There's lots of things I absolutely disagree with him. But on this, he's absolutely spot on right. And I'm so glad that he's been as fastidious as he has been in uncovering this story. Really important stuff. So here's what I think is going to happen. I could be completely wrong. And I think that the CCRC, the body that is responsible for referring potential miscarriages of justice to the Court of Appeal, I think that they will actually refer this now to the Court of Appeal. Mark MacDonald, Lucy Letby's new barrister, has assembled a brilliant team of people who can refute what has happened with her. Of course, she was awfully failed at trial. She didn't have anybody there, like any defense witnesses. I mean, it's just almost like it was set up to fail. It was really bad stuff. There's no evidence of any of these claims against her, by the way. I mean, not even circumstantial, to be real. And T2 said, avoid police and hospitals. That's where we're getting to, right? And Cian said, 19 nurses discusses Lucy Letby case. Please invite. Well, take that as an invitation if anybody hears this. Madeleine McCann, stop the funding. I've been fighting the CCRC for 17 years. As you rightly say, they have their own agenda and reputation to uphold. And I think that person in the comments might be somebody I'm about to talk about. I'm not sure. Yes, that's right, Angela. Luke, yes, exactly. No, I think Peter Folding is exactly the same thing. I think they are both probably coming from the same place. I'm not convinced that any of them are particularly comfortable with being interviewed by me live. Certainly Peter Folding. I had this weird experience with Peter Folding. I'm going to tell you about it, actually. Just to go back quickly to the Nicola Bulley thing, Peter Folding was the expert, the diving expert. I was contacted by his wife saying, I see that you've done loads of stuff to do with Nicola Bulley. Would you be interested in interviewing Peter Folding? I said, well, yeah, I've tried to, but he seems to be ignoring my requests. And then she came back and said, oh, I didn't realize, kind of like, I didn't realize it was you. What's wrong with these people? What's wrong with these people? Are they scared of me? Why would they be scared of me? I'm just asking questions. Yes, it's Ian Crosby in the comments. I'm coming to you, Ian. I'm coming to you in your sterling work. Ian has been working for all of us. In fact, let's get to him next. Let's show him on screen. I hope you don't mind, Ian. I took this from your website. Here's Ian Crosby, who's actually in the comments under Madeleine McCann, stop the funding. So Ian had fought for a judicial review. So last week we heard, right, that Operation Grange, the British investigation into the disappearance of Madeleine McCann, has been refunded. £86,000 more was given last week. And they can't quite decide how much the British taxpaying public have already paid to this. I would estimate it is closer to 15 million than the 13 million that they're prepared to admit to. Anyway, Ian, quite rightly, did something really important, and that is he filed for a request to proceed with a judicial review. Now, if you're not aware what a judicial review is, it's a type of court proceeding where a judge reviews the lawfulness or otherwise of a decision, of an action, or a failure to act by a public body. It's not an appeal. It does not re-examine whether the decision was right or wrong on its merits, but rather it focuses on whether the correct legal process was followed. And so Ian did the thing, as I say, he's working on behalf of all of us, because I absolutely object to the continued funding of Operation Grange, not least because the people who were closest to Madeleine have not been subject or not been part of this investigation, which is absolutely insane, because statistically, there is a higher likelihood that when a child goes missing, it is either those related to the child or those who are close to the child or the parents. So it's absolutely ridiculous that the opening of Operation Grange was that neither the parents or the friends were part of this investigation. Absolutely ridiculous. And so anyway, Ian, he put in for this judicial review, and it's good. I actually, Ian, I went through what you put in your application. I thought it was absolutely good and absolutely spot on right. And some of the issues that Ian takes, and I think that's important. One of the things he says is, I hope you inform your viewers of the money that Kate and Jerry control, currently in excess of 1 million, which was given by public and celebrity donations worldwide, specifically to fund the search for Madeleine. Well, I've just informed you. And so what it was is, Ian is essentially saying that none of this makes sense. It doesn't add up. There are a number of grounds in which you can apply for a judicial review, and one of them is to do with irrationality. And Ian talks about those, as I say, those donations which have gone into a private fund, right? Madeleine's fund, Leaving No Stone Unturned Limited, and obviously controlled by the McCann family. And we know that early on, when young children, when pensioners were giving money to this fund, Kate and Jerry McCann used some of it to pay their mortgage for a couple of months at least. They've used their for public relations, image management, which I have covered in my documentary. And I think that Ian talking about essentially why I'm paraphrasing you here, Ian, just to kind of like cover the whole thing. But what Ian is saying is, one, it's not okay that we are continuing to fund this. And two, has Kate and Jerry McCann ever been approached to use some of the Madeleine McCann fund money towards Operation Grange? And I think those are really key and important points, because it's not fair what happens. Okay, the McCanns get it all ways. They get an unprecedented police investigation into the disappearance of their daughter, but they also have been blessed with millions into a fund that they have used, as I say, how they want to, because they do have control over it. And Ian, I think, is quite right. Has a request ever been made to the Metropolitan Police Service, to the parents of Madeleine McCann, to seek any release of any of these funds? I mean, I really think that they should be contributing these funds to the police investigation. And he says, to the best of my understanding, the parents of Madeleine McCann, being a professional standing, have never funded from their own financial savings or ability to raise funds in searching for their daughter. He goes on to say the responsibility and welfare of Madeleine McCann was and remains the responsibility of her parents, not the worldwide public or celebrities. He also goes on to talk about how these are just simply rubber-stamped approval exercises. And he used the example of the last one, the funding for the last year, not the current year, but the funding for the last year was rubber-stamped by Dame Diane Johnson MP in the Home Office. And as he says, none of us are aware of any due diligence that is taking place before the minister of the day, whomever it is, on that occasion it was Johnson, but before the minister of the day approves the use of those public funds. And he says, therefore, there have been significant public funds which have simply been rubber stamped approved. Now, I happen to think that what happens is that this is an open secret in Parliament, in the Home Office, that it is just that what Ian is saying is we don't mess with this. This is a political hot potato. This has gone on long before our time. This started with Blair and continued on through Brown, in fact, through successive governments, regardless of political persuasions. It went from Labour and it's gone on through Conservative, even the Lib Dem and Conservative coalition rubber stamped it. So it's successive governments that have approved this. Anyway, he presents all of this to the court and they came back and they refused, almost a year later, they refused his application to the High Court, but they went further and they said it was without merit. Now that's pretty awful. That's pretty awful stuff. And the reason that's pretty awful stuff, because when a court says a claim or application is without merit, it means that the case is considered hopeless, fundamentally flawed, legally unsustainable. But I, as a member of the British taxpaying public, do not believe it is any of those things. I think Ian was absolutely right to request a judicial review on Operation Grange and the funding of it. It's ridiculous. They're in it together, says Sailaway. It's absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, and on top of that, the judge also slapped him with costs in excess of £3,000. And I think it's actually outrageous that any of this has been allowed to happen. And the problem is that there is clearly favourable treatment given to Kate and Jerry McCann. I mean, clearly. And I would go so far as to say it's not so much favourable treatment as protection, because they are protected because they are all in it together. Kate and Jerry McCann, the people who were there, the politicians, all of them. And it's unfair. It's unfair to the millions who go missing. And the focus on Madeleine is, what I'm saying here is obviously no disrespect to Madeleine. Poor Madeleine, who almost certainly died in apartment 5A on that holiday. Poor Madeleine, but she has been used, she's been weaponized. And again, you know, some of the earlier stuff, precursor to Jay Slater and Nicola Bulley, because Madeleine, I would argue, was one of the first kind of Twitter cases. There was even a hashtag, the hashtag, McCann hashtag. And it was sort of one of the first criminal cases that was really debated online. And then there was an academic study done about trolls. And obviously, poor Brenda Leyland, who was one of the people who was not a troll, who was questioning the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. She was doorstepped by Martin Brunt from Sky News and died several days later. And a coroner claimed that she had taken her own life. Again, question mark, question mark. So really problematic. The whole thing is really problematic. But we also know that they don't want to end Operation Grange. And one of the reasons they don't want to end Operation Grange, because that's when accountability must take place. They can hide behind an ongoing investigation to say, we can't give any real details right now. Well, it's still ongoing. But once it ends, then accountability has to take place. And I really believe that everybody who has enabled Operation Grange to continue, every single Home Secretary, every single Prime Minister, every single senior cop should be held to account for this. So, Ian, you tried your best and it didn't work out. And now you've been lumbered with costs. So I really feel for you. Ian is an investigative author. I think that's how you describe yourself, isn't it? An investigative author. And he's not just interested in Madeleine McCann. He's looked into Lord Lucan. He's looked into Ben Needham and others as well. I think, he kind of did a job on behalf of all of us. And now he's left carrying the can. So I think that's fairly outrageous. Should never have happened. Should never have been allowed to happen. But it did. And thank you, Ian, for working on behalf of all of us, even though you've been slammed for it. Really bad stuff. So, yeah, obviously, Kate and Jerry McCann, they have much, much to answer to and answer for. And not least, why aren't they using the public funds that the public gave for Madeleine to assist this search rather than the beleaguered British public having to do it again? Yes, Cheryl, I've interviewed Peter. He's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant. His statement analysis, he's obviously passed now, but his statement analysis was genius. Stephen has never believed the official story. Never. Thank you, Ian. And Ian is currently looking into the case of Jack O'Sullivan, doing some sterling work there, I understand, which is fantastic to hear. So no judicial review into this egregious spending of public money, but more money for the egregious police investigation. And before I move on to my next subject, which is Margaret Hodge, Baroness Margaret Hodge, former Labour MP. Here's a neat link that has never made any sense to me or others who know this case. And that is, what was Margaret Hodge's nephew, Philip Edmonds, doing in that holiday resort prior deluge the same week as the McCanns? Really odd stuff, because Philip Edmonds, part of the very wealthy Oppenheimer family and nephew to Margaret Hodge, he took his three sons there, aged 6, 7 and 8, on a holiday with him to Portugal. As I say, the same small holiday village as Madeleine. Highly likely it would appear that he was booked via Mark Warner, just like the McCann clan. And question marks. I've been to this place twice, right? It's not a place that wealthy people would necessarily go to. It's kind of, it's sweet. PDL is sweet, right? But it's not necessarily a place you would go to if you have great wealth. So there was obviously something that was of great interest to a number of people that week in PDL, and potentially including Philip Edmonds. But also, what's interesting about Philip Edmonds, which you may or may not know, which was kind of odd, is that newspaper reports stated that Madeleine had been photographed with his 3 children in the play area of the Ocean Club, which is where the McCanns and their friends were staying, on Thursday, 3rd of May, 2007. And that was the day that Madeleine was reported missing. And what so incredibly, potentially enormous about all of that is that many people believe that Madeleine died before May the 3rd. And certainly the last so-called pictures are deeply problematic. But if he's actually saying that he had pictures with his sons and Madeleine taken on that day, well, that's to a degree some proof that she was still alive on that day. And he claimed that he'd given pictures to the police and to the McCanns. And what's odd is it's never been made public, even though there's been a lot of talk online about the last official pictures and the problems with them. And he'd engaged in a conversation back in 2011 with Tony Bennett. Tony Bennett is a former solicitor and very interested in the McCann case and done a ton of work into the McCann case, and actually really went after me. It was odd when I was making my documentaries, he really went after me, which I thought was kind of odd. It was almost like he wanted to be solely in charge of the McCann case, but he has done some sterling work, to give him some credit. I will give people credit, even if I think they're a-holes, right? And so he has done some sterling work. And the sterling work that he did was he had an email conversation actually with Philip Edmonds, in which Philip Edmonds admitted to having these photos of Madeleine on the day that she apparently disappeared. And very interesting telling stuff, but that was back in 2011. Has anybody ever seen those pictures? Because I haven't. And I always thought it was curious. Why was wealthy Philip Edmonds, why would he choose that small little fishing resort as his choice of holiday venue for that same week that McCann's and their friends were there? Question mark, question mark. Which really neatly brings us to Margaret Hodge herself. Have I got some images of Margaret Hodge? Well, I have previously done a report into Margaret Hodge. Dame Margaret Hodge called to account. I will put the link in the description at the end of this stream. And it features a rather brilliant confrontation where she is confronted by Leslie, a brilliant activist, about her role in the Islington child abuse scandal and what happened with the so-called professionals who advised her that there was no problem. So let me just talk to you about Margaret Hodge. Margaret Hodge is a former Labour MP. She is now Baroness Margaret Hodge, and she is in the running to be the next chair of OFCOM. OFCOM, of course, is the authority, the body that regulates our communications. What I'm saying now, to a degree, although actually they still have less say about what's going on online, but they're gaining ground. The whole point about the Online Safety Act was really to seize control of what was going on online, but they oversee what's broadcast, and so they are responsible for all of that. This would be so egregious if she is appointed chair, and I'm just about, over the next 15 minutes or so, I'm about to tell you exactly why it would be really problematic if this woman was appointed chair. So at the moment we hear that there are 3 people in the running. None of them I would necessarily appoint chair. And this is where they back us into a corner, isn't it? Because we end up in a position where we're like, who is the least bad? And it's really bad. So they're looking at former Tory Jeremy Wright, former Channel 4 chair Ian Cheshire, and Margaret Hodge, former Labour MP and Life peer. Insiders believe that the race is now between Wright and Hodge, which is interesting. And I'm going to now give you all the reasons why Margaret Hodge cannot possibly get that job. The decision will come down to MP Liz Kendall, who is the Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology. And I'll show you shortly why that, if she chooses Margaret Hodge, we will all have reason to believe this is a biased appointment. Anyway, Hodge served as a Labour MP for Barking after winning the by-election in June 1994. She ceased to be an MP in June 2024. She was born in Egypt to Hans Oppenheimer and his wife Lisbeth, and the family moved to Orpington in Kent, where they started their family-owned steel trading company Stemcore. And it was Stemcore that her nephew was also working for, her Philip Edmonds' nephew, who was at the same place when Madeleine McCann went missing. And it's now one of the world's largest privately held steel companies, annual turnover of over 6 billion. Hodge is a major shareholder. She lists her holdings in the Parliamentary Register of Members' Interests. And there's so much wrong with Hodge, it's difficult to know where to start. So there is the Islington child abuse scandal. There's the past tax controversies. There's the family business ties to apartheid South Africa. There's the fact that she is a Zionist, and she is part of the infiltration of the British government. She's a friend of Israel, part of the Jewish Labour movement. She carried out the anti-Semitism witch hunt in Labour. She's an extremely, extremely problematic individual. So Islington Council, first of all, she was the leader of Islington Council. There was extensive abuse at Islington care homes. spanning from the 1960s to the mid-1990s, involved survivors from over 40 different children's homes. I've interviewed a number of Islington child survivors. It is terrible what happened to them because she did everything she could for it not to be acknowledged. There was a total dereliction of duty by her council. Children were abused in homes, some subject to night runs involving transport to forests where awful, awful things were done to them. Hodge was in charge. She spent the last few decades blaming officials for her not doing more to help the children. Senior council staff accused Islington children of making up the abuse they suffered in care. And she admitted that she listened to officials over victims. She blamed any attempt to stop a later investigation. She undermined one victim. She wrote to the BBC to stop a report. She's done so much, right? But I'll tell you who is an absolute star of all of this woman. Her name is Liz Davies. Liz is fantastic. She's a former senior social worker. She was employed by Islington with her manager, David Kofi. She raised concerns about serious sexual abuse of children under the care of Hodge's Islington Council and beyond. There was correspondence between Hodge and the social workers, and Hodge declined a request, correspondence between Hodge and the director of social work, which indicated that Hodge declined a request for extra investigative resources. And the investigation that Coffey and Davies were carrying out was dismissed by council officials in May 1990 after the police declared they had found insufficient evidence of abuse. And despite this, Liz Davies continued on. Yes, indeed, she did. And it was in 1992 they got something of a breakthrough when the Evening Standard, the newspaper then of London, resumed reporting allegations of abuse in Islington care homes. Its initial report was slated by Hodge as a sensationalist piece of gutter journalism, although she has since apologised. Then in 1995, there was the White Report into sexual abuse in Islington care homes, which she didn't take part in. And Dr. Liz Davies has been absolutely amazing. It's taken its toll on her. She reported this repeatedly to Hodge's senior managers over a period of several years. They were deeply concerned that there were pedo rings operating within the Islington care home system, including members of staff and other visitors. Liz Davies had meetings. They had meetings with police, senior council officers. We went through allegation after allegation, says Liz Davies. They all said there's no truth in any of them. And Margaret Hodge said she was told that the victims were naughty kids who'd been bribed by the Standard. And she now accepted that the claim of abuse was true. She did not do squat. She was happy to shut this down, right? I don't believe her fake apologies, not at all, because she was also forced to admit that she tried to block a BBC report by questioning a victim's credibility, and she actually ended up being sued for that. Let me get to that shortly. So one of the things that Liz Davies said, if officers deliberately misled her, then she should have reported them to the appropriate regulatory professional body. And this advice, apparently, that Margaret Hodge was given has contributed to 30 or more years of institutional cover-up and denial of survivors' experiences and disclosure of serious crimes. And quite rightly, Liz Davies has always criticised Margaret Hodge. This suggestion that not speaking to children was the reason that she had her disbelief. She should have talked to the children then. That's what she should have done. Or she should have listened to the staff. She should have listened to Liz Davies and her colleague and other professionals in all the agencies. And as Liz Davies said, all these years on, this is unfinished business. Hundreds of survivors of the Islington Survivors Network want to know the truth of this cover-up and the names of those responsible for it. But if it wasn't bad enough, after that absolute show that she had done at Islington, Tony Blair then made her Minister for Children. Outrageous. And Hodge did everything she could to hinder investigations. She savaged victims and the reports that people were telling her about. And in 1985, Demetrius Panton wrote to Islington Council. So this was before this all came out, to complain about abuse that he had suffered while in council care during the 1970s and the 1980s. Panton received an official response in 1989 in which the council denied all responsibility, and then it all tumbled out. And in 2003, as I say, Blair appointed her Minister for Children, and then Demetrius Panton went public, as he absolutely should, with his allegations that he had been subject of abuse in Islington Council care. And although that he had repeatedly raised this matter, he had been ignored. He identified Hodge's complacency as ultimately responsible for the abuse that he alleged that he had suffered. And Liz Davies simultaneously went public regarding the concerns she had previously raised while working for the council. And Margaret Hodge, when she'd heard that the BBC were planning to do a programme, so she wrote to the chairman of the BBC at the time, Gavin Davies, and described Demetrius Panton as an extremely disturbed person. Well, she paid for that. Right, she paid for that. Let me just take lovely Liz Davies off the and bring back Margaret Hodge. Here she is. She paid for that. Her solicitors had to give a formal apology in the High Court on the 19th of November 2003 to Demetrius Panton, together with a financial settlement of £30,000. She should have been made to apologise personally. I hate this idea that barristers go in court to apologise. She should have been made to apologise, because Demetrius Panton, he held her to account. It was absolutely wonderful. He threatened to sue her for defamation, and it ended up not going to trial because they ended up settling. She ended up paying him. So she is an extremely, extremely problematic individual, and it will concern me deeply if Liz Kendall gives her the job, because Liz is gagging to sort her old mate out. Do you know what I realised last night? When I realised, I was like, oh my God, no. When there was a Labour Party leadership in 2015, Liz Kendall was in the running. Guess who nominated her? Margaret Hodge. Liz Kendall is possibly about to sort out her old mate. It's outrageous. I am deeply concerned. Margaret Hodge, by the way, there's more internal issues that are really problematic, how they're going to be sorting out their old mates. Margaret Hodge was married to Henry Hodge, he's since passed. And Henry Hodge was a solicitor, and Hodge, Jones and Allen. And guess who worked for him? Victoria Starmer, the wife of Sir Keir Rodney Starmer. So these are all mates together. It reeks, lenticular cloud, it reeks. And by the way, if you don't know about Henry Hodge, he became chairman of the National Council for Civil Liberties in 1974. And what happened a year later? Why, PI, the Paedophile Information Exchange, was granted affiliate status with the NCCL in 1975, a year after Margaret Hodge's husband became chairman of the NCCL. What do you think about that? What do you think about that? PI, yes. The Paedophile Information Exchange, he gave it affiliate status, and PI remained an affiliated group from 1975 until it was disbanded in approximately 1983, 1984. I don't think it's been disbanded at all. I'm so over these people. Reba, me too. I'm really worried, Nikki, that she's going to get the job, because she might be, like, can you imagine that situation? She sorted out Liz Kendall. I mean, Liz Kendall didn't get it. Corbyn beat her, which obviously Margaret Hodge was very much involved in the witch hunt against Jeremy Corbyn. But there are so many problems that she cannot be chair. And the other is her daughter, Lizzie Watson, is a long-standing senior editor at BBC News. That's a conflict of interest. It's a really worrying, it would be a really worrying appointment, not least in respect of the threat that it poses to democratic and impartial transparency in the British media. And she has had this prominent and proud Zionist, pro-Israel, aggressive activism in opposing support for any kind of support for the Palestinian people. This is a politically loaded appointment if she gets the job. She is the witchfinder general in the whole Labour anti-Semitism madness. And there are deep questions about Margaret Hodge. Tax offshore controversy. She's faced accusations of hypocrisy regarding tax affairs. She was made chair of the Public Accounts Committee, and people were like, hold on a second, what happened at STEMCOR, which was founded by her father? Well, at one stage, they were just paying 0.01% of tax on 2.1 billion of business generated in the UK, and she was made chair of the Public Accounts Committee. The Public Accounts Committee is about holding people to account, including civil servants, and she was made chair of it. Awful stuff. Really problematic. Plus, by the way, kids, she's a Fabian. She's a vice president of the Fabian Society. You know what they're all about? Slow but imperceptible changes. And at a keynote speech to the Institute for Public Policy Research in November 2004, she defended the concept of greater state regulation of our individual choices. She asserted that some may call it the nanny state, but I call it a force for good. In other words, she wants the state to be all powerful. She's pretty much everything that's wrong with our society, according to me, and I'm allowed to have opinions, right? She's very much into censorship. She's closed down debate on the crimes of Israel. She was made a free man of the City of London in 2013. So no, Hodge absolutely cannot be the new chair of OFCOM, because it will be worse than ever. It's really worrying indeed. So, we'll see what happens. We will see what happens. And yes, I think we're all right to have deep concerns. But I mean, Robert, I'm very worried that she's going to be sorted out, one, by Starmer, and also because out of the three leading contenders for this role now, the three people is one Tory. I don't know what Robert Cheshire is, who was at Channel 4, but also her Labour. Well, it's Labour who get to appoint who's going to be chair of Ofcom. And the woman who gets to appoint her is an old friend who Margaret Hodge has already backed. So it's just ridiculous. She is on that list. She is. Hamish said, stop paying these vile champagne Marxists. This is insane. How do we not? One hand washes the other. Slipperier than a barrel of snakes, if I can even say that. John, don't say it's a foregone conclusion. It can't be. Of course, they may think that there's just too much, which will show that it's a compromised appointment, that they decide not to do it. So we shall see. But really, if Liz Kendall appoints Margaret Hodge, we will all know why. And we will all know that it is very problematic. Very problematic indeed. So that was what I wanted to say about that, because obviously the thing that we know about what they want to do at Ofcom is, and they've been having problems with the Online Safety Act. They've not been able to push it through in the way that they wanted to. They've not been able to censor social media in the way that they wanted to. Remember, one of the things that I was talking about last week was one of the guys who had been a witness in the creation of the Online Safety Act. Well, he was done for engaging in conversations with who he believed to be a 13-year-old girl and sending her abusive images. And it turned out to be a cop. That was one of the guys who, Lyron Velleman, who was also part of the Jewish labor movement, Labor Friends of Israel, all the same stuff over and over and over again. And we're so sick of it. Miss Dizzy D. Yes, but might have to wait for a little while. So we are also sick of it. Now, as I said at the start of this, let's take her off the screen and bring down our blood pressure, because we all loathe and detest this individual, and with bloody good reason. I'm so sorry what was allowed to happen to the victims. This is Demetrius Panton, by the way, but good for him. He took her to task, but she should have been made to go to the High Court and apologize to him, not use a barrister to apologize to him. I never forget that it was the Tories who set up the online harms bill. I never forget that, indeed. Right. Remember what I said at the start of the show, peeps? I said it's going to be a show of roller coaster emotions, and I suspect we're about to enter another part of that roller coaster today. This involves a man, a very brave man. I mean, I don't use the description hero very often, because I think it's completely overused. But in terms of my next guest, it's not used enough. we are talking about somebody who is absolutely a hero. His name is Gordon Woods, and he's joining us today with his daughter, BRIANNA. Here they are. I'm going to bring them in now. Here they are both together. Hi, BRIANNA. Hi, Gordon.
Morning.
Oops. It might help if I put in my earplugs. I'm having one of those mornings. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah. I can hear you fine, yeah.
I can hear you. Thank you for being here today with us. It's lovely to see you both. I wish it was under different circumstances as ever. I think I've said that before. Gordon, I've talked to you over a period now of 6 years. This is your book. Wonderful, magnificent book. I constantly have this in different pages because I read through it often because I think that this is a go-to book if anybody wants to understand what took place at this football club and at the boys club. Gordon, anybody can see that you're not looking like the Gordon that I've interviewed before, right? Can you tell us what you're going through there? I can't hear them. Can you hear them, kids? Can you hear them? No, I can't hear you. Something on there, BRIANNA?
Can you hear? Is it just quiet, or can you not hear?
I can go on.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you, Gordon. I just heard you.
Maybe I need to speak a bit louder.
That's it. Perfect. I've got you now. I've got you. So Gordon is a survivor of Celtic football, and that in itself is a whole controversy because they did everything they could to distance themselves from the boys club and the football club, which he's fought long and hard for many years. Gordon, as I say, you're not looking like the Gordon Woods that we've come to know and love, the brave, strong individual. You are still brave and strong, by the way. What's going on with you health-wise, Gordon?
I was stage 4.
Stage 4 COPD.
End of life care.
End of life care. End of life palliative care. We've got a lot of carers in at the moment, and I'm classed as a young carer, but we're doing well. We're coping. But I feel like when you're stuck in that type of situation, you don't have an option to not cope. You just have to cope with it.
You are an amazing daughter, an absolutely amazing daughter. I'm proud of you, and you're not even my daughter.
Thank you.
And Gordon, you talked to me for many years, over a period of years, about how amazing your daughter is. And when I had the good honor and pleasure to see her for the first time yesterday, I can only conclude you're absolutely spot on right. And you have been through hell and back. And I think I was one of the first people I'm just coming back at me a slight bit then. I think I was one of the first people to interview you back in 2020, wasn't I?
Yes, you were. And the problem was, when I first came forward, the Daily Record in Scotland ran front page story on it. And then silence. The other journalists weren't interested. I was just banging my head on a brick wall. And then you came on the scene and you gave me an hour on the Raw Report. And that opened so many doors, Sonia, because other journalists just were prepared then to listen.
Good.
And there became, as BRIANNA will testify to, an avalanche of journalists.
Good.
From the Scottish Sun, Scottish Daily Express, the Daily Record, the Times, the Guardian. I think everybody except the Financial Times. And then there was podcasts in Australia, America, Canada. And suddenly it began to gather pace. The only thing that irritated me at the time was I was the only one who waived their anonymity. So, of course, because of that, if any story broke, the first point of call the journalists had was to us. And although I wanted to keep the fight going, it got tiring after a while, but we persevered. BRIANNA was with me. And this, as I said in one of the first interviews we had, the sequence of events.
I'm so glad it set up those sequence of events, because
Yeah.
you needed to be heard. It was so vital. I'm going to briefly bring this individual on the screen, just because I think it's important that people
Yeah.
see who we are talking about, right? This is Jim Talbot. This was your abuser. You were at Celtic Boys Club. And what were you doing at Celtic Boys Club? You were a young boy. You were a teenager, weren't you?
Yeah, I was 13. And
Take
I'll
it steady. There's no rush. No rush at all.
I'll be the first to admit it. I wasn't particularly a superstar at football. But I went on the trial anyway, and this individual, who wasn't anything to do with the scout system to evaluate the skill of the young boys, he was a founder. He was a financial side of it. And I was unsuccessful. I didn't achieve the requirements that were in their eyes required. And this guy came up a few minutes later and said to me, "Just ignore that, Gordon, come back anyway." So I then became a part of what they call, rather abhorrently, the Celtic family. I was part of the family. I didn't know at that time it was an incestuous family, but there we go. And that man intervened and brought me back to the club for one reason only.
That's right.
Nothing to do with my footballing ability.
Yeah.
Because he was a paedophile, and that, for whatever reason, caught his eye. And that abuse lasted for, I would say, it's over a year, but it didn't. Sonia, the abuse lasted for 50 years.
Of course it did. And also, I remember when I talked to you before, you also talked about the pain you felt to do with your parents as well, and how the whole thing will have impacted them, and you were not able to discuss it. And you felt blame and all manner of stuff. You were carrying blame that was not yours. It was always Talbot's. It was always the beasts at Celtic, but they made it so much worse for you guys who were abused, because they did everything they could to insist that the boys' club was a separate entity to the main football club. They put you through hell for years trying to prove that, didn't they, Gordon?
Yeah, and as I said in a recent interview, Talbot abused me in 1966 and 67, but Celtic abused me for the next 50 years. They were abusing me up until April of last year, when they started to negotiate seriously. But that was only because they were weeks away from a court hearing in the Supreme Court. They had tried every dirty, filthy trick in the book to avoid going to court. 6 court hearings were hijacked by that club, that abhorrent club, to delay. And they had one reason for doing that. They were hoping the victims would die off. The victims would just give up. They would be disillusioned and they would stop. And that's why they did it. And they put these victims through hell.
Yeah, the process. The process was the punishment, wasn't it? And they did. They fought tooth and nail. And I know that you were desperate to go to trial. You wanted to reveal all this stuff, but all of their machinations that they were doing, and you were then faced with this. You've updated this book, by the way, I should say to people. It is available and there is updated online. And they put you into this situation where you didn't want to settle. That wasn't really what you ever wanted to do. You wanted to go all the way, but they were delaying. Then there was the issue of putting you into a situation whereby if you were to lose, as you said quite rightly in the book, even if it was only like a 1p difference, you would be left carrying all the costs. Then there was the fact of your failing health that you were dealing with. And I think they were working on the basis that we can essentially outlive or outpace these people.
I think one of the mistakes I made it public about my illness, because I think Celtic Football Club, being who they are, I said, we can delay this for 6 months. We can delay this for another 6 months. And they did that for 3 years, by the way. And I outlived them though.
You did, and you're continuing to do so, right? You are continuing to do so. I mean, Gordon, obviously, this is not easy for you. This is not easy for BRIANNA. I think you make an incredible team. I just think you're sterling. You've obviously raised BRIANNA on your own. I know that as well about you. Done a fantastic job. What an incredible girl. Loads of people saying in the comments, you know, you must have done something right, honestly, because the thing is, I think we said this yesterday, right? My brother said we get the children we deserve. Well, your daughter is super dedicated to you, and that's for a reason, because you've been a super father. And yes, absolutely, she's wonderful. We love her so much. But I mean, obviously you're going through stuff. It's a struggle, it's emotional, it's painful. Why did you want to come on here and talk today, Gordon? Why was that important to you?
My mortality is becoming ever closer. And I'd said I spoke to my daughter, BRIANNA, first. I said, I'm not doing this without speaking to her. And I spoke to her about it. And I said, it's time to put a closure to everything and an end to the story. And I wanted people to see what that club has done to Gordon Woods over the past 6 years. I don't blame them for my illness. That was inevitable.
Was it?
Yes, but not today. They brought it on possibly by a couple of years. And it's a couple of years that I now won't have with this one. That's what they took from me. They didn't cause my illness, but they exacerbated it, and they've brought it forward probably by a couple of years. And that's not an estimation by me. That's what my doctor has told me.
You've got me welling up here. You're a danger to me. You really are. I'm a professional journalist and I'm all welled up here.
I've always had that effect on women.
You have. I am absolutely unashamed to be emotional. I think that if there's ever a time to be emotional, it's in a situation like this. And I think that what you've been through, there are floods of tears in the comments, so I'm definitely not alone. And I think that what you've been through really shows us the mark of you as a man. It really does, because they did fight you tooth and nail. The truth is that your claim on its own was worth at least around the $250,000 mark, wasn't it? And they did everything they could to take that away from you. Tell us about that.
Well, Celtic shot themselves in the foot because they wanted to appoint their own psychiatrist and their own mental health professionals to assess the damage done to victims. And I received, I was inundated by emails from a Professor White. And I'm not casting any aspersions here whatsoever. But that man, I had to answer something like 500 questionnaire, going right back to my childhood, my school days, my young adult life.
Digs it all up again, doesn't it? It re-traumatizes you. That's what they did.
And then that questionnaire was followed by a 1-hour interrogatory interview where he tried to rip it to shreds. And I'll be honest, I was in tears 2 or 3 times. But I fought through it and I got the interview concluded. And then I heard from my solicitors, after another year had passed, that he'd come down very heavily on my side. And I think that was something Celtic did not expect, primarily because this psychiatrist, on his online profile, he'd Irish tricolour. He was in a same-sex relationship, which isn't a problem. And he was a Celtic fan, hence the tricolour. Why they appointed that individual, I don't know. It should have been an individual from England or Wales or somewhere who nobody was involved in it. But anyway, he came down very heavily on my side. And I think that began a panic within the Celtic boardroom, because they knew that by this time Torbett had been convicted. So I was vindicated in a court of law that what I had said about Torbett was true. What I needed vindicated on now was what I was saying about Celtic Football Club was also true. And it was true. And I know it's true. And more importantly, they know everything I said was true.
And what were you specifically saying about Celtic Football Club?
That they have known since at least the late 60s that there was paedophiles operating at the club. At one point, Sonia, in the 90s, you know, there's now been 9 paedophiles convicted who were either employees of Celtic or Celtic Boys Club or associated with them, official coaches, that kind of thing. 9 convictions.
Look at that.
Now, out of that 9, there was 7. 7 of those 9 were at one time with Celtic and Celtic Boys Club at the same time for several years. That is a paedophile operation, it's a paedophile ring, it's contrived, it's systematic, and there was hundreds, if not thousands, of young boys abused. And
it was industrial scale. That's what was going on, right? Organized, like you say, systematic, industrial scale. But here's what they couldn't cope with you was that you were so together. Once you started to give interviews, you were so together and so articulate. They wanted you to be a mess, an emotional mess who had lapsed into drugs and drink and all. That's what they wanted to have happened. And yet they had this articulate man who had managed to rise above the problems. And that's obviously no disrespect at all to any survivors who struggle, none whatsoever. It's just that you were able to like stand up and fight against them. You were a worthy opponent.
I was proud to do it, Sonia, not just for me, not just for BRIANNA, because a lot of this was for her. It gave her a tremendous lesson in life. If you're right about something, then by God, you speak up.
Yeah.
And you shout and let people be aware of it.
Yeah.
I was proud of I helped even one other victim have the courage to come forward. And I knew that shortly after the book was released in 2023, the legal team did experience an influx, a flow of people coming forward.
Your legacy is secured. I know it's always very difficult to imagine such a thing, but you've done so much for other people because by your ability to speak out and face off with these monsters and not give up, that has sent courage and strength to a whole load of other people. Let me read you some of the comments. We've got some beautiful comments here. MB says, this is crushing. I send love and prayers to Gordon and BRIANNA. Thank God he has a devoted daughter. Shin says, Gordon must have been such a beautiful child, for he is still so handsome. And Wild Aussie Woman says, poor man, I'm really sad to hear this story. Reba says, this breaks my heart. Abused, traumatized, and now suffering with illness. So important to hear his story. And Shin said, I don't cry easily, but wow, my godson just came to ask if I'm okay. Healing guidance is in tears. They're all in tears. Reba wants to reach through the screen and hug you both. That's definitely what I want to do as well. Frangleberry is sobbing her heart out. Robert is tearing up. And Shin says, how can we help BRIANNA? BRIANNA, is there anything, I mean, to any of you, how can we help? Is there anything at all that we can do?
I mean, in the situation of his health, no. But in the situation of the Celtic Boys Club, people need to just keep speaking out and don't let this go underneath the rug. We need to speak out, make it loud for decades, haunting this club for decades. It cannot go under rest.
How are you coping, BRIANNA?
It's very difficult. In this period of my life, it's just exams and everything going on with exams, but I'm coping well. It's just very difficult because I want to spend as much time as I have left with my dad, and it's just difficult knowing that in the back of my head. But you can't do anything about it. There's not a magic wand that can fix it.
I wanted to go into hospice, Sonia, to give BRIANNA some time, but she point blank refused. So the hospices came to me as the hospital bed and everything that's needed in the room when time comes. It's all prepared. So she just wouldn't let me go out the house.
I got you. Marilyn says, thank you, Gordon and BRIANNA. All power to you both. I trust that what you have been through is not in vain. Lisa is bawling. She said, it always seems the best of us suffer the most. And I hear that. I mean, I hear that. And there feels, Wild Aussie Woman loves your sense of humor, Gordon. And it does feel like the best of us, often suffer when they shouldn't. And you went through this hell and you eventually did. Well, you were essentially forced to settle, weren't you? But you'd managed to prove so much. You got a fraction of what you were entitled to. But I should imagine in your position, you were then, like you say, you were thinking about your daughter, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I've been proven to be correct in the course of action that I took because it gave me some respite. It was finished with, I'd done all I could to highlight the abuse at that club. But the only thing I missed when I eventually settled, and the one thing can I say, Sonia, since the very first day that I came forward, I had made a statement to the press that I would not, under any circumstances, accept an apology or an offer of settlement whereby I had to sign a gagging order that I couldn't speak about it. And that was something that I doggedly remained in the forefront. And to this day, I have not signed a gagging order. I can say what the hell I want, when I want, to whom I want.
Love that.
And that's why I was able to update the book with the class action, because without that, with a gagging order, I could never have spoken about it.
I mean, it's phenomenal that you've continued this fight, knowing that, I think, as you said yourself, like you're running out of time. We're all kind of running out of time, aren't we, to a certain degree? But you had your back to the wall and you were still able to continue this fight, dealing with what you're dealing with. Gordon, this speaks so much to your own personal strength. Have you yet realized what a powerhouse you are?
No.
Wow.
No. Do you know, I hear these stories and I hear people talk about heroes, and I've said once before, hero is a man or a woman who runs into the fire to put a fire out or to save people. Hero is a soldier in the front line at war. These are real heroes. Police officers every day put their lives on the right line. I wasn't putting my life on the line. I was just telling the truth, Sonia.
It's very heroic. I mean, I speak to a lot of survivors. I'm a survivor myself. It can be extremely hard to confront what has happened. And certainly because these people hold sway over you, it's incredible that shadow they cast. So what you've done is heroic and it will live on beyond you. It will live on beyond me. That's the thing, is that what you've now achieved, you've set a standard. I mean, that's the most important thing. What about an apology from the club? Has that ever been forthcoming?
Nah. What they said is they're very sorry that children were abused at Celtic Boys Club. But what they should have said was, we are very sorry that young boys were abused while playing under our banner, representing Celtic Football Club. That's what they should have said. But even after the settlement, they still separated Celtic Boys Club from Celtic Football Club. Now, you know, I know, the world knows. The only people who don't know are the board at Celtic Football Club and their 60,000 or 60 million, whatever it is, supporters. They still take the opportunity to abuse me at any time, any point they can. I I put a thing on Twitter. BRIANNA, unfortunately, BRIANNA saw it. I wish you hadn't. I'd have put a thing on Twitter to say that this was my last post, that I was on end of life care, and as far as I was concerned, the fight was over. And there was hundreds upon hundreds, maybe near on 1,000 replies to that, telling me how they appreciated my efforts. And then one popped up, and I'm going to name him. It was from an ex Twitter called Dublin Desi, who's called me an obscene name and said he hoped it would be slow and painful.
That's somebody who's got a horrible life.
That was 3 months ago. And this is after Torbert's in prison.
Extraordinary. Extraordinary. The problem is these people, he or she hiding behind anonymity. We don't know who they are. Could be related to Torbett for all we know, right?
Yeah.
Could be associated with the club, because we know this happens online anyway. And they are demons, Simon. That is exactly that. They're demonic. What is wrong with these people, says Blue Nomad. And it's
the strange thing is, Sonia, see, when I read it, I just laughed.
Did you?
Yeah, it had no effect on me. I told you, it did no effect on me.
Good.
In fact, you know what I did?
What?
I added a page to my book.
About it?
Yes, and I put on it, this is what I wrote on Twitter this morning in my post, and this is the response I got from Dublin, and I named him, this is the response I got from Dublin Davies, and I screenshot his response.
Oh,
and
I love it.
It's now in
Love
my book.
Yep.
And I sent him an email and told him I'd put it in my book.
Absolutely love. I love it. Gordon, I wonder if at this stage in one's life that you kind of become more philosophical about our life, that you're able to see the bigger picture about what's taken place. Are you able to do that?
I don't think so. I think there are times when I've said to BRIANNA, you know, darling, you don't understand what I've achieved. And you haven't really, have you? Because she's young, but when BRIANNA's in her early 20s, or maybe she's got a family of her own, that's when she'll realise, or in 10 years from now, something comes up about Celtic Boys Club and my name's mentioned.
Right.
Long after I've passed. And I think that's when she'll realise the enormity of what I've achieved.
What the old man was involved in.
Yeah, of course. And what I've done, because you know how sometimes when a parent passes, the children have kept his phone so I can hear his voice, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I've got a computer, BRIANNA computer.
Oh, you're going to set me off again, Gordon.
I've got hours. I've got hours and hours of TV interviews with you, podcasts in America, Australia. I've got all these, and there's about 30 hours of viewing. And I've done that because she'll get sick of the sound of my voice.
Oh gosh. Do you know, my daughter used to call me Tiny Tears when she was little, because she always said I can be so emotional, but it's genuine emotion that touches me. And the relationship between you both, I think, is phenomenal. And we're all feeling it. BRIANNA, what are you studying? Says Marilyn.
Pardon?
What are you studying?
I'm taking my higher right now. I'm taking higher modern studies, higher German, National 5 English, and National 5 practical cookery.
Oh, you are a powerhouse in your own right, Gordon. She is an absolute pride to you. Amazing stuff. Credit to you.
Sonia, last year she did O levels. They call them, what do they call them now?
National 5s.
National 5s. And the results come in and she's 6 A's.
Wow.
And she just had her prelims for her Nat 5s and her hires. And the prelims have all been done. And she's projected to get A's and everything in her hires.
Wow.
She did an exam last week in her German. She got 100%. How can you get 100% for a hire?
Wow. It's astonishing. It's beautiful to see you both together on the screen, I have to say. And it really fills my heart that how close you are and how you have each other. Emerald Rose, I agree. She is amazing. I mean, both of you have to read the comments. There's so many comments, too many for me to even cover, but people have really got your back here because one, I personally feel very honored that you chose to come and talk with me today because I know that things are difficult. And I want to be clear that there was absolutely no pressure put on Gordon. This is absolutely Gordon's choice.
I contacted you, Sonia.
Good.
I said to BRIANNA that because I was on Sonia Poulton first, then I'm going to, if anything's going to happen, I'm going to be in Sonia Poulton last.
Oh.
And that's what we decided as a team, that's what would happen. And because of that, and I mean, as I said to you in my first interview, this is the one that was the catalyst.
Yeah.
When she came home from school when she was 10. And then I quizzed her about something. She said, Dad, I had to do the right thing. And I thought about that for several hours. And I said, I've got to do the right thing too. She went to school the next morning and I picked up the phone. Phoned the police and the lawyers. And that set the ball rolling. She was a catalyst. And I'm so proud of that day at 10 years old when she had to do the right thing.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Absolutely phenomenal. You know, I think what's important about conversations like this, my God, I'm so weepy. You've really set me off, haven't you? There'll be screenshots of me all over social media. I don't care. I think what's important about conversations like oh, bless you, thank you. I've got some very hard kitchen towel at the side of me. I should have brought some loo roll. I think what's really important about conversations like this is they're real. Right. This is where you know you're completely in touch with your humanity and who you are. And, you know, seeing you together and what you've gone through together is really amazing. And I think that it is moments like this that our humanity is tested. And Gordon, with everything that you're going through, that you can still rock up here and tell this story as eloquently as you have done again. Is really credit to you. It really is a credit to you. I want you to be able to say whatever you feel you need to say in this conversation. Anything else that really you're burning to get off of your chest?
All I wish for is long after I've gone, the Celtic Football Club are still answering questions. There's a couple of people who have never answered a question. And if they want to sue me, they can. But they have to be quick. And it's a couple of directors, Kerley and McCann. They've got questions to answer. They've escaped questioning in its entirety. All these paedophiles, and I'm not casting aspersions on them.
You're just saying questions to be answered, right?
Yeah. Heavy questions. McCann and Kerley. Go after them. They need to be held to account. I mean, it was only yesterday. No, yes, it's on Monday. Saturday morning, I opened the newspaper, and there's been another victim's been awarded.
That's right.
A court, you know, and there's hundreds more like this. I remember saying to you, Sonia, 6 years ago, there's a lot. It's not just the one legal firm.
Right.
There's lots of legal firms, and they've all got their own.
Right.
And they were waiting to see what happened with the class action. And now that Celtic bottled that, and they bottled it by silencing, they bought the voice of the victims. They bought it. And they still got to answer to so many young boys who are carrying this cloak of darkness over them. Get rid of it and come forward and hold these people to account.
Well, and they will be. I'm absolute. First of all, I believe in karma. I mean, I'm in no doubt at all that it exists. I see it on a constant basis operating in my life. So these people cannot get away with it. And as you said, you're not accusing anybody of anything, but you are saying there are outstanding questions. There are still people who need to answer some questions about what took place. Reba said, Sonia, could you please ask Gordon when and where his book is already available, my love? Where would you prefer people to buy it from? A lot of people in the comments saying they want to buy it. Where would you prefer people to buy it from, Gordon?
It's on Amazon.
On Amazon.
It's on paperback and hardback. And be careful when you go on, because there's the full book, which is with the class action included. And there's a separate addendum to the first book. It's just the class action. And I've noticed that recently a couple of people have been buying the edition, thinking it's the main book, and it's not. So make sure it's the full 290 or 288 pages, because people who bought the book in the early days, and 2-3 years ago, they didn't have the class action section on it. I did make that chapter available online free. But if they wanted it in a wee book form, then they could buy that. But I did make it free, but it's now included in the main book.
Well, I mean, presumably, this will also assist BRIANNA as well. Any book sales will assist BRIANNA, right? Is that
Yeah,
fair?
I mean, the book sales are minimum, because it's not the kind of subject that people...
Right.
I mean,
people are funny. They struggle to even listen to these subjects, right? But doesn't mean we're going to stop talking about them, though, Gordon?
I've had friends of mine that bought the book and said, Gordon, I can't read it.
Right.
I bought it and I stuck it in the drawer. I can't read it. But the point of the book is for people to read it.
Right.
It's not the point of buying it. It's the point of reading it.
Right.
And understanding what only I went through.
Yeah, absolutely.
Millions of children are going through it every single day. And it's still happening today.
Yeah.
These filthy individuals don't go away.
No.
All we've got to do is try and set them off course and not to give them opportunities. They'll always find an opportunity. But as long as when that opportunity is discovered, they're thrown out and the police are involved. That's been the failure. And that's why I was so adamant about, what's it called again? Mandatory reporting. To make it a criminal offence, if you know about child abuse and you don't mention it to the police.
That's right. Should be mandatory reporting. It's ridiculous.
We don't have any in this country.
No.
And the UK is one of the very few countries.
That's right.
On this entire planet.
Yeah. That was one of the recommendations from the child abuse inquiry that the Tories didn't put into effect. Now Labour haven't put into effect. So, really, really bad stuff. I agree with you. We have to keep talking about it, whether people want to hear it or not. Glennis said, we will keep talking about this, Gordon. We absolutely will. Gordon, you'll set us all off again, says Madeleine. And BRIANNA, is there anything else you'd like to add today? Anything at all?
I'm very proud of my dad.
We're all proud of your dad.
No, but honestly, I think his hard work has been unbelievable. Yeah. The amount of people who were coming in and talking about such a touchy subject, it took a lot of willpower and just emotions to even just speak out about that. And the amount of people that he's influenced and has brought this whole disgusting case to life is phenomenal. I'm ever so proud of my dad. And if I was born in another life, I would choose to have my dad.
Oh my God, the third time set off. Listen, you two are dangerous to me today.
She doesn't get looks from me, by the way. She gets her looks from her mother.
Stunning combination. That's what it is, a stunning combination.
Her mother was a stunning woman, but sadly just on the outside. But and I say that with heavy heart, Sonia, because I know for a fact she's listening to this. You've got quite a lot of viewers in Thailand at the moment.
Oh, bless you. Bless you. Gordon, before you leave us today, you're only leaving us today. Before you leave us today, anything else you'd like to add?
I think everything that I wanted to say has been said. People know what I set out to achieve. I achieved, and I leave a legacy which I'm very, very proud of. And I leave a beautiful daughter who has been, I would hope, our future with the housing and funds for our university and all that are all already in place. And I know that when I do have to leave her, she's in good hands. And she's got a lot of friends and a lot of important people who have become involved. And I must say that even like social services, the carers, the nurses, they've all been great with BRIANNA. They've bent over backwards to help her. They've been wonderful. The NHS has been wonderful. And I thank everyone over the years for their support, and just keep the name of Gordon Woods and the Celtic Boys Club scandal alive.
Absolutely. And I want you to know absolutely unquestionably, and that is I probably need to take a break myself. Ridiculous. I'm a professional. But BRIANNA, if you ever need anything and you think Sonia can help me, you must not hesitate to ask me. Okay, Gordon, you know that, right? Anything that your daughter needs, come to me. I'll take care of you.
I said to BRIANNA this morning, I'll give you Sonia's email address.
Absolutely. Absolutely. God, what a mess I am today, people. Incredible guest. You are everything that is right in the world, said Lisa. Indeed. I'm a mess, people, but you know, I'm giving it my best shot because these people here are really important and they matter so very much. I'm going to let you go now, Gordon. Take a break, have a good swig. And as I say, if there's anything at all I can do moving forward for any of you, you just must let me know, okay? Don't hesitate to let me know, all right?
Thanks once again for all your support, Sonia. It's been appreciated over the years.
God bless you. And they are messing around with the viewing numbers, Nikki. I noted that today. Isn't that funny? People think that I'm being shadow banned on YouTube at the moment, which would be kind of peculiar for this one, but we're going to get this. Chat, all tissues out. They're all, I mean, they're just sobbing and weeping, but I'm the only one on screen. I'm weeping for all of them. Love you both, says Glennis. Curly Crew said, God bless you. The Blue Nomads is bless you too. God bless you both. There's so much love here. And we are all with you both, Gordon, says Catherine. Bless you, Gordon and BRIANNA. Make this story into a film. It's a must, said Magic Mac. It takes courage to show emotion, says Angela. Well, indeed. Listen, you take good care of yourself, and lots of love to you both. Anything I can do, you just have to ask. I will make sure you've got my mobile number, okay?
Appreciate that, sorry. Thanks, Bill. And thanks for all the comments and their assistance.
Thank you so much.
Dougal said, I'm crying so hard. We're all crying. You've got us all crying. Take good care of yourself. Gordon and BRIANNA Woods, everybody. Absolutely amazing, powerful stuff. Thank you. And yeah, well, obviously, they've reduced me to a wreck today, people. They've reduced me to a wreck. And I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that at all. And this is what makes me human, right? This is what makes me human. So thank you, Kath. Thank you so much. Thank you all. Thank you all for showing such love and support to BRIANNA and Gordon today. I very much appreciate that. I really do. And it really touched me that he said, and when he'd said yesterday, you were the first person I talked to and you're going to be the last. And I was supposed to be doing a tech check with him and I was crying like a baby. Yes, Marco, the strength of these two is just incredible. What a powerful interaction. Thank you. We are many, says Humphrey. We are many indeed. Thank you for your truth, Gordon. Love to you both, said Miss Dizzy D. They got you today. I'm a big sook too with awful stuff like this. Yes, Wild Aussie will not. I generally, I mean, I can take a lot, right? And but it's like a genuinely emotional situation, isn't it? Right. Gonna set me off again. Okay, let's well, I did say it was going to be a day of emotions, and I'm actually going to reflect on something else now, which for many people has many question marks over it. And it's to do, you may or may not know who this person is. I mean, many of you will. And that is Swedish DJ and producer Avicii, right? He died, we were told, by suicide on April the 20th, 2018, at the age of 28 in Muscat, Oman. And many people question the idea that he took his own life. The news wants us to think that he was like, you know, on holiday and that he took his life by cutting himself with something sharp. And but it's weird. It's really odd. And so I've promised for the longest time that I would look into this, particularly lovely Marlena, who often shows up in our comments. She's been all over this for a while. So I did. I decided to go in as deeply as I humanly could. And Tim Berglund, indeed. Tim Berglund, Swedish DJ and producer. And many people were absolutely devastated by the passing of Tim. And as I say, he might not mean anything to you, but he meant something to millions of people around the world. And many people cannot accept that he ended his own life. Some people suggest the circumstances surrounding his death are weird. And Tim adopted the moniker Avicii, and he told people that it meant the lowest level of Buddhist hell. And he actually ended up choosing the moniker for a really kind of plain reason. And that was when he went to create his social media page on MySpace. And we remember MySpace. The name Tim Berglund had already gone. So he chose the name Avicii. And when on his passing, his family indicated that he struggled with extreme stress, with perfectionism, with mental health issues, stating that he could not go on any longer, that he sought peace. And he'd previously retired from touring due to health issues. And I think one of the things that I'm always very aware of is that my aim is never to hurt any loved ones when I look at these things, but I am a journalist and I should always look at things as dispassionately as possible, she says, after weeping all over the show today. But I did attempt to do that. And obviously I have some distance from Tim. I didn't know Tim. And when I started to look at it in the round, I was like, this is quite weird what some people are saying, because here's some of the things that I realized about him. Let's bring in some images of him. First of all, he was very unique in many key respects. And one of them, one of the things about him was he brought people of all different persuasions together, right? All different cultures, all different nationalities, all different music genres. And he was essentially uniting lots and lots of different people, which was fantastic. And he was producing this incredible stuff. One of the places that I looked for further information on the insight into him and into his character, a very sensitive soul, by the way, was I watched the Netflix documentary, I Am Tim. And it kind of showed him when he was a baby and how he had a happy childhood. He was grew up in Stockholm. I've been to Stockholm. I stayed there with a Swedish friend. When I was like in my early 20s, I was very much involved with they're still dear good friends, but it was like the Swedish posse who had come over, Camilla, Anna, Lena, Annalie and co and everything. And so I went to Sweden, and Sweden is a different place. It's quite late. It was certainly quite laid back in those days. It's not like on edge or edgy like London. And that was where he grew up, in a super sheltered environment. He said he'd never had to be afraid of anything. And it sounded really idyllic. His parents sounded fantastically supportive, and they're in the Netflix documentary. He was very creative, very musical. A friend introduced him to software. He downloaded it, and that was it. There was no stopping him. And he essentially went from this kind of quite geeky, gamer, spotty teenager, and he transformed into something of a swan, as people do. And then he met Ash, and Ash was a huge part of his story, very close, his manager, also kind of co-creator, promoter. And Tim Avicii was only like 18 at the time. They spent like the next decade together, and together they went absolutely huge. I mean, absolutely huge. They started developing their music and mixing, and Ash was everything to him. And as I say, he brought people of all nationalities, all persuasions together. And what was great, Ash, great little sounds so patronizing, I don't mean it like that, but at that time he was unknown. And so what Ash did was he essentially created a bidding war with major labels for Tim, but there wasn't a bidding war going on. Ash was just making it sound like there was. So Ash, Universal Music Sweden were interested in signing Tim, and Ash said, well, Virgin have already offered us 500,000 euros. That's what they're prepared to pay. And Universal was like, we're not going to offer that. It's too much. But then they started to see that this guy was gaining traction, that he was like taking off in the clubs on white labels and everything. So in the end, Universal Music Sweden signed him for 500,000 euros, and then discovered that there was no other offer, that Universal was the sole bidder. I love that. People play in the record companies. I absolutely love that. But Universal made all their money back on Tim within 6 weeks of signing him. And everything took off with his first major hit, Levels. And essentially, like almost overnight, it appeared he went from small theatres to big amphitheatres. It was a global takeoff, and it was very organic. It wasn't run by marketing departments. It was people locking in to what he was about, and his performances as well. And initially he wasn't into drinking, he wasn't into any drugs or anything like that, but then he discovered what he considered to be his magical cure, because actually he was very anxious individual. He had a lot of anxiety. And he said he found the magical cure of having a couple of drinks before he went on to perform. And then I think that it just increased. And he ended up very ill. He had pancreatitis from drinking. He lost a lot of weight. There were health issues that were actually starting to be talked about in the music industry. And after Marlena had come to me and said, please look into this, I started to talk to friends in the music industry, past and present. And several friends who had worked at Universal said that it had been commonly talked about that there was uncertainty about the end of his life at the record label, that people were uncertain about it. And one of the reasons why, which I'll get to, was actually he himself admitted he was in the best stage of his life before he died. He said he was happier than before he was famous. He found that fame wasn't that great. Fame often is a poison chalice. People don't realize they strive for it so long and hard, and then when they get it, they realize how poisonous it really is. And he found himself on sort of autopilot mode. He was just turning out a lot of music, and he very introspective individual, very sensitive, and his talents were considered way beyond being a DJ or even a producer. He was a musician. He was absolutely a musician. He teamed up with lots of great people, including Nile Rodgers, including Coldplay. And he realized one of the things that he said, very spiritual character. He said he realized that at the core of everything, melody. There was melody, which is at the core of everything to do with music. And it was very spiritual to him. And he wanted to create timeless music and melody. He kind of drew on melodies that went back hundreds of years. And you could tell that he absolutely loved music. And there's scenes in the Netflix documentary where he's in the studio with artists like Aloe Black as one example. And he would do incredible things, like he'd get country and bluegrass music to meet dance music. I put them all together and you'd get these great, incredible results. But some of it was a bit next level and a bit experimental for some people at one stage. And he'd had a really bad experience when everything was taken off and his songs were doing really, really well. And then he decided that he wanted to up it a level in terms of his musicianship. And he brought in all these people to do different stuff. And you might know the song Wake Me Up as one example. Huge hit, massive hit. But at the time, his audience were like, what the hell is happening? So he introduced the world to his new artists and sounds at this festival in Miami. And so they played older stuff and then they shut the whole set down. And it was almost like he went from the past to the present. And then what he did was he had all his new performers performing on stage, but the audience weren't ready for this. They were not ready for this. And I saw some of it. It was so uncomfortable. There was like audience booing. It was a disaster. And the record label bosses, who are just cowards at the best of times, they were horrified. They were like, this is outside of our comfort zone, what he's trying to do. And, but not to be broken by any of this. And also they said that what Tim did was that he was so impacted by it initially. He spent like all night on Twitter just reading the very bad comments that people were making, saying this is the end of Avicii's career and all that. He wouldn't come out of his room. He was absolutely shattered by it. But then they took this and they turned it to their advantage. So what they did was they put all the music with these artists on SoundCloud. They published all the comments, all the bad comments. Ash did this. He had brilliant business brain. And then the comments were just getting better and better. And after a week, it was the opposite. It was absolute positive response. Because sometimes when an artist kind of changes tempo or whatever, it can be quite difficult for their audience to move with them. And it took a little while for their audience to catch up with the new move that he was taking. Anyway, that was when Wake Me Up exploded as a single in the UK, one of many. He was a workaholic. He was in demand. Everyone wanted a bit of him. Now he was a superstar. Now he was rich, but money was not making him happy. And neither were the opportunities that were coming his way. He was hospitalized multiple times due to severe health issues, primarily, as I say, pancreatitis, which was caused, we were told, by excessive alcohol consumption, a hectic touring schedule. He had an 11-day hospital stay in New York, further hospitalizations in Australia and Miami. There were gallbladder issues. He was dealing with addiction and pain management to manage the pain that he was suffering from his pancreatitis. He was prescribed heavy opioids. He said he felt constantly anxious, that it felt like a stone in his gut. A constant motion. He started to change the way he was doing everything from touring to making music. And he got to the point when he just didn't like it anymore. He said, it isn't me. I'm just trying to be something that isn't me. I want to be free from all ideas of life. He said change had to happen. And that was when he and Ash split up for a period of time. They didn't speak for about a year. And he said he wanted to cancel all his last shows. He said he was trying to find balance in his life. Many people can't necessarily understand the pressures that he will have been under at this stage, because the music industry wants more, more, more. Even though at one stage they started to get jitters with his new music and like, this is out of our comfort zone and we can't handle it. Now it's all taken off and now everybody loves the new music. The music industry want more, more, more from him. And the pressure on him to keep working will have been intolerable. But he had new plans, and he was attempting to find some balance in his life. So he started to travel around the world, took his friends with him. There's some beautiful imagery of him with monkeys and all manner of things. And in the Netflix doc, there is actually footage where he says he is feeling free and happy again, like he did at 18. This was not that long before his death. He said he had no agenda. There was no motivation to him other than making music. He had lots of dreams. He wanted a family. He wanted to make a new band. He was making music again. He was excited to be back in the studio and writing music. He was making his next record called Tim. He was seeing a holistic doctor. He was seeing a therapist. He was very spiritual. So he was really getting on top of his life in a major, major way. And his friends even said that he was in the best place that he'd ever been and that they'd ever seen him before he died. And his lyrics became an absolute driving force. And one of the songs they did was Fade Away, with the lyrics, all I know is that we are holding on. A lot of it was really spiritual. And he just really wanted to put his mind at rest, but he was managing to do that. And he had become drained by the music industry, and rightfully so. And one of the things that drained him was he'd had an early fight with Simon Cowell. And Simon Cowell is not a good individual, not a good individual at all. And what essentially had happened in 2011, Leona Lewis, who had won the X Factor, sampled Avicii's track Fade Into Darkness on her single Collide. And she was signed to Simon Cowell's Psycho label. It's not called Psycho for no good reason. And the samples were not credited to Avicii. I mean, Simon Cowell's supposed to be running a professional label. They sample somebody's music and don't even credit it. Then Avicii attempted to block the single's release. The matter was eventually resolved out of court, and Collide was made into a joint release between Lewis and Avicii. But it was wrong what they did, and he didn't like it, and he wasn't happy. And so essentially, the legal battle surrounded a single which sounded remarkably like Avicii's track. And the DJ released the track, made claims that Leona Lewis had copied his backing track. And then the legals all got involved, and he ended up having to, it was just awful because his music had been taken, and then he was forced into a situation because of legal reasons where he then had to like do a joint release of his song, even though he didn't want to. He'd attempted to block the Collide single in the first place, and because the instrumental part of the song had been directly taken from his track, he said. And in a statement released by Psycho, it was explained that both artists would now work on the single Collide, but he didn't want to. Avicii did not want to at all. He wasn't happy with the agreement. And he just, by that point, I think, and that was quite early on in his career, he was like, geez, these people are savages. So he had badly crossed a major music industry player. Simon Cowell at that stage was a major music industry player. And generally, there were situations where what Simon wanted, Simon got. But Avicii wasn't having it. Avicii was a musician in his own right who didn't want his music just taken like that. But legals being legals, unfortunately, meant that he ended up having to do this joint release. And I'm sure that would have bothered him a great deal. So he had made enemies within the music industry, but nonetheless, when it was reported that he'd taken his life, like his father said, none of us imagined that something like this could happen. Never. And I think it was a shock for people, which is why there are so many question marks over it. But that's not the only reason there are question marks. One of the songs that he had released, and I think this is important to reflect on this, I've got some imagery, was Better Days. And Better Days, you can actually see from this imagery I've chosen, and I've chosen, first of all, be clear, I'm not monetized today's show. It would have been impossible to, and I wasn't prepared to do that. But Better Days is about child trafficking. And I've taken these images from a video that is available on YouTube. And it's children in the back of a van who are being picked up by filthy men. And it is about trafficking. And he was getting more kind of socially aware and about situations that were happening. Now, one of the things that my contact said to me was, people didn't like him getting involved with this kind of like social conscience stuff. They wanted him to be more about, be free, be happy, this is your world, enjoy it and all that kind of stuff. But actually, if you look at his lyrics throughout, he'd always had quite a social conscience, but now he was in their faces, and now he was actually peeing off the type of people who could impact him. Because as we now know, as people like I have been talking about for decades, the truth is that our industries, particularly music industry, entertainment industry, film industry, it is also reliant on trafficking. It uses a lot of trafficking. So now Avicii was essentially right in the lion's den. He was taking to them his issues and he was ticking people off. And I think that's one of the reasons why people think there are a great deal of question marks over it. There's also a lot of imagery, obviously, in his music and on his stage shows that people like to talk about a lot as well. But I think Better Days is a perfect example of him being very socially aware, socially conscious, wanting the abuse to stop. But the thing is I don't need to tell you this, but musicians ain't what they used to be. When I was growing up, at least when I was a music journalist, artists were more interested in what was going on in society. And my speciality was hip hop. And then hip hop was kind of taken over by the money men. And then they started to portray Black people in very, very dark ways indeed. And then they were bringing in prostitutes and strippers as like the front runner faces of hip hop, because they were taking it away from being socially conscious. Well, Avicii wasn't having that. He was very much determined in that what turned out to be the later stages of his life to be very socially conscious, to talk about the things that would actually upset the people perhaps around him in the circles that he moved in. Yes, Ben. Yeah, exactly. The homophobic rappers were often gay. Yes, indeed they were. And again, coming from Avicii's background, he was coming from a different place to a lot of these people. Again, the reason I reflected on Sweden is kind of a different place. I don't think it's a coincidence that when it came to C19, Sweden was one of the places that kind of opted out of all the rules and restrictions to a large degree. Anyway, For a Better Day, it was song and music dedicated to raising awareness about child trafficking and exploitation. And the video was co-directed by Avicii. And there was a lot of controversy around it. And it was filmed in Hungary, again, a center of much child trafficking. And it actually, the project marked Avicii's directorial debut. And one of the things my contact said was people were also concerned that he was going to increasingly move away from music and into more kind of documentary work, which wouldn't be good for the music industry. And the thing is, because he had retired, even though he was still making money in terms of royalties for the music industry, it's not the kind of money that you make when somebody dies, right? That's when, because what happens when somebody dies, and this is proven with every artist, probably whoever did live, but certainly latter day artists, Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson, you name it, they had a lull in their career, or they pulled back, like Avicii had pulled back. And then they died, and then their music shot to the top of the charts again. And that is a frequent occurrence. That is something that happens on the regular. So there were these question marks about whether he had really upset people within the music industry, whether he was upsetting actual abusers, whether he was he wasn't making as much money for the music industry as he was before, because he just stopped playing the game. He wasn't prepared to play the game. And yes, Lyra, it has long been. In fact, I actually talked about, I think, Hungary in my Red Cross report the other week. I think it was. I could be wrong. But yes, I've known about that often. So he'd cross people in the music industry. He was crossing people to do with child trafficking. He was also not making the kind of money for the music industry that he'd made before. But in answer to the question, what happened to him? Well, I try and avoid as much as possible just theories, right? I try and do that. Did I find evidence that there was third-party involvement in his death? No, I did not. And if I did, I wouldn't be here in front of you on a screen telling you. I would have had to have reported it to the police, because that I have a duty as a journalist to do that. Did I find reasons to question the manner of his death? Yes, I absolutely did. Yes, I absolutely did. By his own admission and by those closest to him towards the end of his life, was the happiest he had ever been. Now, just to say a little caveat there, because I do know something and understand something about suicide, is people can switch on a dime when it comes to suicide. They can be feeling fantastic and happy one minute and then not so much the next. And by the way, there is something wrong with what's going on YouTube right now, because there's all the people in the comments, and YouTube have just plummeted my numbers right down, which I don't care, but clearly there is something going on with my channel. It happens. Musicians always make more money when they die. Yes, Sylvia, that is the reality. Trauma is flip-flopping from joy to despair and back. Ben, that is the reality. And so I don't rule out that he could have felt that he was away from Sweden because he was in Oman. He was away from Sweden. He was away from the music industry. And it may just be that he just kind of thought, I've done everything I need to do. Because like Gordon Woods, Avicii's legacy lives on. And but he was also speaking out. He was using his creativity and a massive platform about issues where powerful men and women are involved, the type of men and women who surround the music, entertainment and media business. So I think that it is fair to say that. And and I think one of the reasons why people are always reluctant to, again, is we don't want to upset the loved ones who are still living, because it's painful what they're already dealing with anyway. Okay, but I do think it is fair enough to ask questions. I don't think we can automatically assume that he was taken out. And I know that is very much something that happens, like on TikTok. You get these videos and it was like, oh, he was killed because of this and he was killed because of that. No, I haven't been able to prove that. But I have been able to find, I believe, enough information to suggest that there's question marks over the manner of his death. Question marks. What's that? This is often why the good die young. I'm still here. Yes, got you. You're still here. Disappearing. Thank you. I very much appreciate that. So, but Marlon, I don't think I have an ultimate answer for you, other than when I talk to people, it was a fact that your concerns and other people's concerns have been echoed within the record company, that people had wondered whether we'd heard the full story, because they also didn't release a great deal of information pertaining to the manner of his death either. And that could have been, you know, for all manner of reasons. The family are Swedish, they function differently to, you know, kind of like maybe Americans and English. You want to hear everything, want everything out on the table. Who knows? It could have been a cultural issue, and there could be all of these things that are going on. There is, yes, absolutely, YouTube messing with my channel today. But it's okay, we're here. Exactly. Insane stuff. Anyway, I just wanted to say that I think it's important to raise that up. If I receive any more information, I will report on that again. But before I broke up for my Easter holiday, I did want to mention that because, one, I think that he was actually a real credit to this world. The kind of person that he was, a really sensitive soul. He, you know, didn't set out to harm anybody. He wanted to raise awareness. He wanted to bring people together in a very joyous way. For all the people that loved him, he is very fondly remembered. So, yes, insane what they're doing on here today, right? Ghetto said, I've got 8 watching. Yeah, effing right. Right, exactly. They'd be upgrading code or something. Is that what they're doing, Richie? Yeah, there's something wrong, Mr. Dunham. There's absolutely something wrong with the YouTube view account today. Maybe I can actually tell you behind the scenes what it's actually saying. Oh, no, I don't have that in front of me. So anyway, rest in peace, Avicii. Marlena, again, I don't think I was able to give you any definitive answer other than to say you are not the only person who's been asking those questions, and people in positions of power in the music environments that he worked in are not absolutely convinced with what we've been told about his passing. Yes, Stephen, sensitive people do find life hard. How has Robert got 288 and I've got 8? I don't understand. Really weird stuff. Anyway, listen, I'm gonna tell you some good things, right? 11 people. Lovely letter. Let's bring up the mood, shall we? Let's bring up the mood. This letter is from Alex T from Portsmouth on behalf of herself and her family. She said, Grand Rising, Sonia. My twin sister Penny and I have been watching you since Rise. We followed you to TNT breakfast, and then we followed you onto your wake-up journey. None of us agree with everything you say, but you are honest and always sparked debate between us. Until a year ago, when Pen and I fell out. It was about something stupid, but it escalated, and we both ended up saying horrible things to each other. We hadn't spoken since May last year. Recently, she sent me an early morning wake-up investigation you had done. I can never watch Wake Up until the evening, but she works from home, so she watches live. It was about Sir David Attenborough. She wrote a comment that you had stuck up for David Bellamy in the video over Attenborough. We were both so happy because we have long said he was far superior to establishment voice Attenborough. Anyway, long story short, your investigation video brought us back together again, and we both wanted to say thank you. That actually made me cry when I read it. I was like, what? Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that wonderful? I love that. It's brought twin sisters back together again after they'd fallen out about something really, really stupid. I love that. A lovely email, Shin. I was very, very touched by that. And we need more of that, don't we? And let me make you laugh, right? I received this the other day. I was like, what's this? People sending me drugs through the post. This will make you laugh. You know those kind of posts where it says what you ordered and what you got, right? So let me just show you if I can bring this on the screen. Oh, here it is. So you can see what I ordered and you can see what I got. What I ordered were all those plants, which I thought was what I was getting. What I actually received was this. I was like, you are actually kidding me, right? That's ridiculous. We are being wiped out. Michael George is 2. I'm down to 2. I'm down to 2. And I can see that there are tons of people in the comments. YouTube, you can't do this right in front of our faces without us detecting that there is something wrong. Yes, funny, right? I mean, come on, what I ordered and what I received. I was like, oh, for goodness sake. Ridiculous. It's a DIY job. That's right. Anyway, I'm going to be landscaping the garden anyway this Easter holiday, which I'm very much looking forward to. So I thought I would just share that with you because I thought that would amuse you greatly. It's succulents. That's exactly what it is. But I thought I was going to receive all of those, Mel, just like that. It's all of them. Right. What do I want to say? first of all, thank you as ever to my wonderful donators. Thank you to people on the chat today. Thank you, Danielle Krause. Daniel said, excellent show as usual. Have a relaxing and well-deserved Easter break. Simon has been crying today. Thank you for your super chat, sweetheart. We've all been crying. And thank you, Kath. Thank you as well. And thank you, Linda Isaac, and who said, go get them. I love that. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all your help, people. Thank you to John Goldsmith. Thank you to Eleanor James. Thank you to Jade Torsig. And end note, I haven't really got anything major to say other than it really is now time for me to rest and reflect. We've come so far on Wake Up since May 2024 when Wake Up started. And I just had enough. And I'm so grateful to the viewer email because it kind of reminded me of the journey that I've undertaken over the last few years, you know, like launching Rise and issues there and then going to TNT and issues there. And then I just thought I've had enough of all of this. I'm going to do my own thing. And I have. And with your support and your backing and people showing up here Monday and Friday, we've been able to do it. And I want to take some time out because I want to think about where do I want to take us next? What do we want to do? What can I learn from this period so that I can make what I do even better, even more precise, even more in the public interest, and even more feeding my soul. I have to feed my soul. Those are the things that matter to me. I will be back on April the 13th. It's a Monday, so it's not quite 2 weeks. And just to say, if you've sent me an email in the last couple of weeks, please forgive me. My inbox is a mess, but I will tackle it over the holidays. Thank you as ever to all the wonderful people on my Patreons and everybody who supports me around here. It means the world to me, actually. Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate that. Jeannie said, is Wake Up on the Road a thing? Yeah, I think we have to do it as a thing because don't forget, I bought an SUV and I'm determined to go out on the road. So I think that now the weather's getting better, we should definitely consider that. Let me read you some of your messages. Courtster said, made it back before the end. Thank you so much. I don't usually comment, but had to today. Thanks, chat. Much love, everyone, and enjoy your break. And thank you so much, you wonderful people. And I'm probably not going to celebrate Easter in the religious way as such, but it is a good opportunity to catch up with some people, get some things done. I also really like this period. Bethany, are you a blubbering mess? Bethany is a blubbering mess in Wales today. That's all right, sweetie. That's absolutely all right. It's amazing. I have a chat full of commenters, and on my screen, it's showing only one person. Isn't that amazing? What have they done? What have they done to us today? We don't care, do we? Listen, I want to thank you always for having my back, for being so supportive of me. It actually means the world. And yeah, thank you for dealing with me today. And have a lovely Easter, all of you, whether you celebrate or not. And I will be back refreshed. You can still contact me on the emails. I might not necessarily get back to you during the holiday period, but I will be back. Yes, indeed. Love to you all. And Mark, I see you there. And as I said before, you all need to give yourself... That's our show. Thank you, everybody. Lots of love to you. I'll see you on April the 13th. Take good care of yourself.